Hello and welcome to the 9395 capacitor replacement video. This video will show how to replace the capacitor assemblies with the latest date codes. This applies to both the A15 and A20 capacitors, which are the DC and AC filters respectively. Note that this process needs to include both the A15 and the A20 capacitors, and not one or the other. Be super careful and pay close attention when loosening these 4 screws to ensure that no metal fragments fall down onto the back of the interface PCB or into the contactor assembly area. Loose metal fragments may not seem like much, but they can short out delicate electronic parts and basically ruin your day. Also be careful to support the control and interface board panel during removal and replacement. Don't let this assembly hang down, as it may create a loose connection. Double check the interface board connectors for signs of rolled connectors, loosened pins or wiring, and frayed wires. And here we have the fan tray. Slowly remove the tray and pull it straight out horizontally. Do not lift it up at an angle, which will cause friction and can lead to grooves or scoring on the edges or associated shelves and create more of those pesky metal fragments that'll ruin your day if you let them. Cut the tie wraps to free the wiring harness that connects the top of the K1 contactor to the A20 filter assembly. And then do the same for the K3 contactor. Loosen the 8mm mounting bolt at the top right of the A20 frame bar, which holds the assembly in place, just enough to allow you to remove the A20 assembly. Next, lift the A20 assembly up and pull it out of the front of the UPM. Note that the A20 I/O assembly must be removed from the front of the unit. Now that you've removed the A20 I/O assembly, it's time to remove the A15 battery DC filter assembly. Remove the two screws holding the A15 pan onto the frame. One screw is on the left and one is on the right. Then slide the pan back, tilt it up, and place a wedge, such as the handle of a large screwdriver, underneath the frame of the pan to gain more advantageous access to the hardware on the L15H1 and X1 power terminals. You can also use a clamp or small vice grip tool to hold the bus bars in place, which will help you later with reassembly. Take careful note of the arrangement before removing the half-inch bolt that secures the 4 black wires to the L15X1 inductor power terminal. Now we're going to remove the half-inch bolt that secures the 4 red wires to the L15H1 inductor power terminal located below the A15 battery DC filter assembly. Note the arrangement of the half-inch bolt and its associated hardware, and record it so that when you reassemble, you're not creating conditions for a future failure. Connect the J4 and J5 resistor connectors from the front of the CFM board. There are 3 wires on the front left side of the CM filter board. The FLT J2 and FLT J3 wires are black, and the FLT J1 wire is red. Remember, or better yet write down, which terminals they connect to, and then disconnect these 3 wires. Note that depending on the age of the unit, the FLT-J3 wire may be gray instead of black. FLT-J2 connects the battery negative to the CMF board, FLT-J3 is neutral, and FLT-J1 is positive. Now you'll loosen the 8mm nut connecting the DC capacitor assembly to the A15 assembly and pull it forward slightly until it is free of the A15 frame. Cover the wiring on top of the contactor assembly to prevent damage from the next several steps. Once that's done, pull the DC capacitor assembly out toward the front of the unit while lifting it up high enough to clear the contactor assembly. If your new capacitor assembly includes a new CFM board, use that one in the replacement procedure. If your capacitor assembly doesn't have a new CFM board, you'll reuse the existing board. Closely inspect the new A15 assembly to make sure it's wired correctly. Now tighten the single 8mm nut holding the DC capacitor assembly onto the A15 assembly frame. Then you'll attach the 3 wires to the connectors. The black wires, FLT-J2 and FLT-J3, and the red FLT-J1 wire. From the front of the CM filter board and moving to the left, note which wires are connected to which terminals. FLT-J2, the battery negative black wire, connects to the top terminal. FLT-J3, the neutral black wire, connects to the middle terminal, and FLT-J1, the battery positive red wire, connects to the bottom terminal. Connect the J4 and J5 resistor connectors from the front of the CFM board. Install the 1/2-inch bolt holding the 4 black wires on the L15X1 inductor power terminal. The stack-up arrangement of the hardware and wiring must be in the same order as you noted when you remove the assembly. Use a torque value of 270 inch-pounds when putting the hardware and cabling back on the L15X1 power terminal. Also, take care not to compromise the connector on the blue current sensor. Install the 2 screws that hold the A15 pan in place to the frame, one on the left and one on the right. Install the A20 assembly by inserting it up and over the contactor assembly. Tighten the 8mm bolt at the top right of the A20 frame bar. This one holds the assembly in place. Then install the 10mm nut and cable at A20E1. Cut the necessary tie wraps on the wiring harness from the top of the K1 contactor to the A20 filter assembly, and then repeat this step for the wiring harness on the top of the K3 contactor, which runs to the A20 filter assembly. Install the required hardware on the tops of K1 and K3. Use a torque value of 170 inch-pounds for the connections on the top of the K1 and K3 contactors. Check the input-output filter capacitance values by measuring from the top of K1 and K3 to the neutral bus, and confirm 135 microfarad. Note that you will need to temporarily remove F20, 21, and 22 to obtain an accurate reading from the output filter. And now, onto the fan tray. Slowly install the tray and pull it straight in horizontally. Don't lift it up at an angle, as this will cause friction and can lead to grooves or scoring on the edges or associated shelves, and create metal fragments that can cause trouble down the road. Watch closely for metal fragments when installing the fan tray. Look for pieces on the side shelves and inspect for grooves or scoring on the tray and shelf edges. Check the power and sensing wires on the tops of the K1 and K3 contactors for proper alignment, and confirm that none of the wire strands are frayed or physically interfere with the operation of the fan array and blades. Ensure that no cables or wiring are anywhere near any of the fans after reinstalling the fan tray. Next is the control and interface PCB panel assembly. Install the necessary tie wraps and connect the remaining connectors on the interface PCBs to allow space for reinstallation of the control and interface PCB assembly. Be careful to support the control and interface board panel during replacement. Don't let this assembly hang, as it may create a loose connection. Important note, do not use a power drill to install panels. Only use a handheld nut driver. And then hand tighten the screws which hold the control and interface panel in place. After you've installed all the panels and dead fronts on the UPMs and UPS cabinet, you're ready to begin energizing the unit. Now that you have replaced the capacitor assemblies, you need to run some final checks and tests to ensure that the unit is operating properly before and during UPM power-up. Use the XCP tool to confirm that your UPM metering is correct, and then perform low-level runs of 200 and 400 VDC before fully powering up the unit. And that's how you replace the capacitor pans in a 9395. Thanks for watching.